Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are joining the 41st lecture of this course on research and methodology. And by this time, we have covered the major aspects of the course. Today, our discussion would be based around the projective techniques. We have discussed various kinds of the data collection methods. The projective technique is also a technique to collect the data, and today we would concentrate our discussion to the projective techniques. The projective techniques are, as we can say, a kind of indirect collection of the method of collection of the data. What does it mean? The projective technique means projecting one's internal states, attitudes, emotions, motives, values and needs to external object. The projective technique is again limited to the collection of data of the concepts which can not be quantified. So, basically the projective techniques gives data about attitudes, motions, motives, values and needs, and the data is limited to collection of these states or these conditions or these attributes of the people. So, when a person is questioned to measure the extent of his knowledge of this subject matter, he gets little opportunity to project himself. On the other hand, if we ask him to write about himself, he gets a better opportunity to express himself, to project his personality in writing. The basic principle of the projective technique is that more unstructured and ambiguous a stimulus, the more a subject can and will project his emotions, attitude and values. A highly structured stimulus, as in personality questionnaire, leaves very little choice of one's own interpretations. So, the projective technique has to be unstructured. If it is very much structured, then there is very less a scope of one's own interpretation, of the respondent's interpretation. Suppose we have a person has purchased a car. Then if we ask him why you purchased the car? Then he would say, the because he purchased because he and his family needed this type of car very urgently, or this car is cheap to maintain, or this consumes less of petroleum, less of gas. That would be the various logical reasons that a person would justify his purchasing of the new car. However, if we ask him that why your neighbor has purchased a new car, then he may say that because they want to demonstrate their wealth, they want to demonstrate their richness, and this is why they have purchased that car. This feeling is maybe his own, that he is attributing to his neighbor. This is the way how a person's internal state, emotional attitude, motives, values and needs are known. Because if we ask him, he would not give the real reasons, rather he would give some logical reasons. But if we ask the same question concerning his neighbor, concerning his relatives, then he would say what he has in his mind. Suppose a person has built a 2-story house, 3-story house, and we ask him, why did you build such a big house? He would say, my family is very big, my relations are also very spread, and many times they come to the city for treatment, and this is why for them I have made this 2-story, 3-story house. Although 1 story was enough for me, but these I have built for my needs of my relatives. So, that is the logical reason that he would extend for justifying the building of a big house. But if we ask him the same question about his neighbor or about his relatives, that why did your neighbor build such a big house, then he may say that because they want to demonstrate their wealth, although they do not need such a big house, but they have built this house to demonstrate their wealth and to impress the people about their income, about their richness. So, this answer comes from his mind about others. But the projective techniques is successful in digging out, in mining the attitudes, emotions, motives and values and needs that he has in his mind. So, the projective techniques. We have The characteristics of projective techniques, the different stimuli like Inkblot test, picture test, doll test, etc., are capable of arousing different kinds of reactions. From the reactions, we find what is in their minds. When we proceed in this lecture, then it will be clear to us. In this here, there are no right or wrong answers. Answers is not in yes or no or right or wrong, because all the answers are given by him. We cannot assign to him, attributed to him. So there is no right or wrong answers. The respondent is also not faced with a set of limited alternatives, like we have been given in the questionnaire, where there were limited alternatives. Of course, some questionnaires are open-ended also, where one can write his comments, but in mostly all the questionnaires, they give alternative answers which one to tick off. So here, that is not. That the researcher is not faced, does not face limited alternatives. The emphasis is on respondent's perception and the meaning given to the subject matter. He is not being asked the questions, but his perception and his meaning of the subject matter, his interpretation of the subject matter is what is to be digged out. It is what is to be found. So, the individual does not talk directly about himself or herself. The purpose of the test is not indicated also to the individuals, and the responses are interpreted as indicating the individual's own view of the world. So, from the examples that I have given to you, it must be very clear that the responses are interpreted as indicating the individual's own view of the world. View about car, ownership of the car, view about the house, building of a house. So, if we ask him directly, then of course there will be no real answers. It would be justified by on the surface by the logical answers. Whereas, if we ask to him about others, then we may get some idea of how he thinks about the phenomenon. That is the projective technique. We shall be discussing a few of them, important of them. Number one is the pictorial techniques, where we use certain kind of, the pictures to interpret the phenomena. So, in this first, we discuss the Rorschach Inkblot test. It's a German name, difficult to be pronounced. But then this test is an considered as an association technique. This was not German, but a Swiss psychiatrist, Hermann Rorschach, who invented or who began to use this technique in 1942. I had earlier said that it is a German word, but no, he was a Swiss psychiatrist, Hermann Rorschach, who invented or who began this kind of test in 1942. In this test, 10 standard cards, each bearing an ink blot representing different diagnostic categories, are administered to the subjects, who are then asked to interpret and describe what they see. Basically, this test is used in medicinal psychology, where the psychiatrists check the level of the problem of psychiatry in a patient. So, to the respondent or to the patient, 10 standard cards, each bearing an ink blot representing different diagnostic categories, are administered, and then the patient is asked to interpret and describe what they see. The test administrator notes down this description for subsequent analysis. Different scoring systems for analyzing Rorschach protocols exist, each designed to differentiate the responses of different diagnostic groups. So, this is a test. And now, if say a patient is given 10 cards, how does he interpret? It gives his mental position, it gives his mental status to the doctors. Nowadays, even Rorschach Inkblot test, there are very computer softwares which are utilized to interpret to analyze how the patient has interpreted and described these inkblots, these inkblot cards, and then the patient is diagnosed and prescription is given. It is, of course, very popular in psychology. Then in the same category, we have thematic apperception tests, which is TAT. It is another projective technique, important projective technique, this in which a series of pictures pertaining to the research topic is center of attention. Some pictures are very ordinary and easy to interpret, while others are more difficult to interpret. The subjects are asked to tell what is happening in the picture. The themes are elicited on the basis of perceptual interpretive, that is apperceptive use of the pictures. This is also called a constructive technique. So, suppose a person is given a picture in which a man is beating a woman. Then the respondent would interpret it in his or her own way. And suppose you give another card in which an old lady is beating a young lady. So, various respondents would be giving various kind of interpretations to it. Or if we find that in the kitchen a stove is burning and an old lady is trying to burn or trying to torture a young lady, then also the respondent or various respondents can give their own interpretation about it. Or if suppose we are given a picture of a boy and girl sitting together to various respondents, the various respondents can respond in many ways. They could be brothers and sisters also, but various respondents would give various kind of interpretations. To what they interpret is in their minds. They reflect their minds what they say about the picture. That is the TAT. That is the thematic apperception test, where thematic pictures relating to a theme is given, and then the respondent is requested to interpret that picture, and the respondent interprets this picture in their own way, revealing what they have in their minds about this test, which is called the thematic apperception test. Then we have the pictures. The researcher presents pictures to the child and asks questions about them. One could present picture of rural and urban persons, Rajasthani and Gujarati females, Hindus and Muslims, Brahmins and Dalits, and so on, and ask with whom the child would like to play with. So, if the child is ready to play with any or not ready to play with any other, it reveals what is in the child mind, in that child's mind about this picture, and of course the whatever is in child's mind may have come from the conditions and environment and atmosphere where he is being brought up. So, we can collect data about their thinking, about their perception of, say, Dalits or Brahmins or Hindus or Muslims about males and females this way. We show the picture to the child and then he reacts through what he has in mind, and that way the researcher collects the data in an indirect method. Then we have the verbal techniques. This is also called as sentence completion test. What is that? The respondents are given some incomplete stories or sentences for completion. In the story, the end is not given, but the children are asked to finish it. A partial sentence is asked to complete with first word or phrase that comes to mind. For example, a female teacher should be, then dash, 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 dash. Then there could be various kind of reactions, various kind of responses. Whatever comes from different respondents is what in their minds. Or another example, a female teacher or a male teacher should not be. So, a male teacher should not be, and then the sentence has to be completed. So, what is in our mind? What is in the mind of the respondents? That would be revealed by the completion of this sentence. A good housewife is, then there can be many things to be completed, many attributes that can be assigned to a good housewife. So, these will be different for different respondents. So, what respondents attributes to the good housewife is what he has in his own mind, and that way the researcher has mind or digged out the attribute or qualities of a good housewife in that respondent's mind, and that way the data is collected. Or an efficient manager is. An efficient manager could be one who is very tough, who is very strict, or who is very friendly with the workers. Or in efficient manager is one who can in fact earn maximum profits for the company, and so on and so on. So, there can be many attributes which can be assigned to an efficient manager. But who assigns what attribute to the efficient manager is the data which is being collected through the story or sentence completion test, which is part of the projective technique. When another example, when someone interferes in my studies, I feel. So, there could be many kind of feeling. So, what feeling could be different for different respondents. So, whatever the attribute or attributes to the this sentence, to complete this sentence, that is what in the mind of the respondent, and that has been collected by the researcher. Then the next is the word association test. This is word association technique. In this test, the subject is given a list of words one at a time and asked to link it with the word that immediately comes to his or her mind. These words are recorded. For example, a teacher is asked about the roles which a teacher is expected to perform. Whatever comes to his mind, he says that is recorded, and that is the data which you have collected about the role of the teacher in the mind of that respondent. So, it is not all respondents should point all roles which a teacher is to perform. Say, for example, to teach, to guide, to control, to motivate, to create awareness, to set a role model, to inculcate values, and so on. So, these are the various kinds of attribute for a teacher that the role he should perform. Not all respondent would give every, but whatever they give, it means it is in their mind. If they say the role a teacher has, the role is to guide, then it means this is what is in his mind about the teacher. So, that way this word association test is utilized to collect the data or information regarding the phenomenon that is available in the minds of the respondent. So, every respondent would answer the question as he perceives it. A college, university lecturer, professor is described these days as politician, class cutting person, asking for more and more pay and privileges, and less interested in studies, research publications, and seminars and conference. So, this could also be the whatever and other attributes also, like a very fatherly figure or a mentor or a disciplinarian. These are also words for the maybe for the lecturer professor. But whatever, if somebody describe or his reaction is about the lecturer and professor, immediate reaction is politician, then that is in his mind. And if some respondent says that the lecturer professor is mentor, that is in his or her mind, which the researcher has been able to dig out by utilizing the word association test. And then play technique, that is doll play. This projective method is used extensively both in theory and in data gathering interviews. For example, the interviewer studying sibling rivalry can set up a scene containing a mother doll breastfeeding a baby doll with another doll of the same gender as the respondent looking on, and then it is asked from the child. The investigator then asks the child what he or she thinks the child doll will say and do when he encounters the mother and baby. The researcher, for example, might produce a doll representing a sweeper, a doll representing a Brahmin, a doll representing a Hindu, a doll representing a Muslim, a doll representing a Dalit, and ask the child which one she would rather play with and which is smarter. Then whatever is in the child mind, in the mind of the child, that comes out, and the researcher is able to dig this information from him or her. Then psychodrama or sociodrama, in which role playing is done. Sometimes students in a college are asked to organize a mock parliament session, and different students are asked to play the role of a speaker, prime minister, foreign minister, opposition leader, MPs of different political parties, and independent MP and so on. This is also called a third person technique because it is dynamic reenactment of the person's techniques in a given situation. The role player acts out someone else's behavior in a particular setting. Role playing is particularly useful in investigating situations where interpersonal relationships are the subject of research. For example, husband wife, shopkeeper customer, employer employee, office clerk, officer clerk, etc. These are the roles. If we assign to different persons, they will speak out what they have, their perception of these in their minds. So role playing is also a very important technique of, in fact, collecting the data through the projective technique method. There are, of course, limitations. The information derived about subjects' personality characteristics is indirect or inferred. Against this, the technique of personality questionnaire gives more direct information. The difference between the projective tests and personality questionnaire is that the items in the personality questionnaire are structured, and they being free from any ambiguity, they convey the same sense to whoever takes the test. The difference in the responses made by different subjects is in no way determined by a difference in their perception and understanding of the given item. On the other hand, in projective tests, the stimulus is unstructured, ambiguous, and unclear. The responses in the projective test tell nothing directly about the subject. They constitute a description of the stimulus. So, projective tests lack the objectivity of the personality test. No doubt, the facts observed in this test are meaningful only when interpreted by the investigator. Different observers draw different meanings from the same observed facts. Without agreement, there cannot be objectivity of the behavioral data. The reliability and validity is low, but the projective tests have one advantage also. The results of the projective tests are unaffected by the response styles. Since the subject does not think that his personality is being assessed, it does not motivate him or force him or in fact urge him to give fake responses. So the response he gives is the original response. The projective test assumes that the individual's responses to ambiguous stimuli presented to him reflect significant and relatively enduring personality attributes. The advantage of this technique is that it is relatively disguised and therefore non-reactive compared with more obtrusive self-report measures. The respondents cannot infer what answers will produce the desired impression. And people, the why it is utilized? Because people find it easier to express their feelings and attitudes than explicitly talking about them. In spite of their best intentions, the subjects may be unable to describe their feelings and attitudes as accurately as they may be discerned in the projective test situation. So, the projective tests produce or may produce more extensive information than a questionnaire or even an interview. Sometimes seeking access to subjects for the study is difficult when the object is made explicit to them. But if it is not very obvious, the permission may be easily granted, and this gives practical advantage to the projective techniques over the other techniques, that is the interview method or the questionnaire method. So, we have discussed almost all the aspects the of the projective techniques. I wish I have been able to make it clear to you. Thank you very much.